Good afternoon. I am Ray Hill, and I have the pleasure and honor of serving as the Executive Director of the historic King Drive Business Improvement District Number 8. And today I stand before you not only in a professional capacity, but also as the proud granddaughter of Lawrence Hill, a man whose resilience and entrepreneurial spirit left a mark on our community. In 1949, my grandfather, honorably discharged from the Navy, opened his first restaurant on 619 West Walnut Street, 1 block away from where we are now. But because of racially charged urban renewal policies in the 1960s aimed at suppressing this community, his restaurant was demolished when 6th Street was widened. He rebuilt his business later on 12th Street, guided by the tenacity that still defines this community. President Biden's Investing in America agenda is giving people with the spirit, like my grandfather had, a shot. Because of this Reconnecting Communities and Neighborhoods grant made possible by the president's agenda, a vibrant 6th Street is on the return. Projects like Complete 6th Street transcends infrastructure. They are commitments to community, to safety, mobility, and equality, especially for the neighborhoods that were burdened by historical disinvestment and the freeway expansion. 75 years later, if my grandfather was alive, he would be proud. It is my distinct honor to introduce the individual leading this transformative charge with a vision centered on connecting people rather than dividing them. Please join me in welcoming our President of the United States, President Joe Biden.
Gov, as my father would say, excuse my back, I apologize. Hello, Milwaukee. Thank you, Ray, for that introduction and for sharing your family story with so many of us. Your grandfather served our nation in uniform, and he started a family business only to see it demolished and the community disconnected because of a new highway. But he never gave up, neither of you, nor of the people of this community. I want to thank you. Governor Evers, my good friend, thank you, Gov. You're the best. And I want to thank you for your partnership across the board for getting us through COVID, rebuilding the economy, and so much more. And the same goes for great Senator Tammy Baldwin and your incredible Congresswoman, Gwen Moore. Is your son here? All right. Well, she represents her hometown with such incredible integrity and tenacity. Mayor Johnson, you're one of the most impressive young mayors I've met, and I've met all of them, I think. No, I really mean it. Thank you. I don't know where you're sitting. There you are. Stand up, Mr. Mayor. I warn anybody, don't run for mayor. They know where you live and you think you can solve all your problems. Thank you for your passport to the city and your leadership in this project I'm here to talk about. Look, to communities everywhere and at this Boys and Girls Club, by the way, I've been a gigantic supporter of Boys and Girls, just the biggest in the country. But when I was a senator, I provided a lot of money during the crime sprees were going on for Boys and Girls Clubs. What you do is you build confidence, you build spirit, you build a sense of belonging, and it really matters. And this project is for you, a future you really deserve. Look, the story of Bronzeville here in Milwaukee is one that we see all across the country. Our interstate highway system laid out in the 50s was a groundbreaking connection, our nation coast to coast. That was the purpose of it. We're transforming the way people live, work, and travel. But instead of connecting communities, it divided them. These highways actually tore them apart. I come from a city, Wilmington, Delaware, where it's the same thing happened. We're in a situation where I-95 is 4 lanes going through a community that was all African American, and it just split it. And it's now about 50, 60, maybe 70 yards wide. And I'm president, I can't get that done yet. Why'd you guys get it first? I don't know. No, but all kidding aside, the same thing happened here and many cities across the country. There are also cities all across America where highways used to be, and they, along with redlining, they disconnected entire communities from opportunities, sometimes in an effort to reinforce segregation. That's what happened here in Milwaukee. More than 100 years ago, Bronzeville was the home of a thriving hub of black culture and commerce. Homes and apartments owned by black families. Black small business from hotels to jazz clubs to restaurants like Ray's grandfather's. In the middle of the 20th century, tens of thousands of black Americans migrated from the South to Milwaukee and other cities in the North to get good paying manufacturing jobs. But by the 60s, the so-called urban renewal swept this country. The construction of I-94 and I-43 tore down roughly 17,000 homes and 1,000 businesses, ripping through neighborhoods and nearby roads. Here on 6th Street, the road was widened, displacing residents and businesses, all so the people outside the neighborhood could get downtown. Today, 6th Street is a wide road without a protected bike path, bike lanes, or bus lanes, with limited access to the green space. Speeding and reckless driving resulting in crashes 5 times that of the city's average. All of this locking people out of opportunities and leaving them more isolated from the social and economic life of the rest of the city. Congresswoman Moore told me when she was a child, she lived a short walk from a public library, a safe place to read and learn, where librarians who were given cake, the librarian would give cake to children when they showed up to read. That's true, isn't it? But then, the new plans disrupted the walk and made the library inaccessible. Sadly, too many communities across America face the loss of wealth, prosperity, and the possibilities that still reverberate today. Imagine all those homes, the mom and pop stores that could have been posted and passed down from family to family. Financial security, generational wealth would have resulted. Imagine what they contributed then and what they could have contributed all these years, and what that would have meant for all of Milwaukee and all the communities across the country. For generations, black, brown, and Native American, Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, communities weren't fully included in our democracy or our economy. But yet by pure courage, heart, and grit, they never gave up. They pursued the full promise of America. Today, we're recognizing that history to make new history. I'm here to announce the first of its kind investment, $3.3 billion in 132 projects in 42 states, going to help right historic wrongs. And in the process, delivering environmental justice by reconnecting disadvantaged communities and neighborhoods, and new opportunities for a future prosperity and many possibilities. These investments advance my Justice 40 initiative to deliver at least 40% of all the benefits from clean transit, clean energy, and climate investment to disadvantaged communities. That's a commitment I made and we're keeping. Here in Milwaukee will mean $36 million in new federal funding to rebuild 6th Street. It means wider sidewalks for children walking to school, safer bike lanes for residents and visitors, dedicated bus lanes to get to work faster, new trees to provide shade, and modern infrastructure to prevent sewage from flowing into the Milwaukee River and the Lake Michigan. These are life-changing improvements. They're also going to make it easy for historic black communities in the North and Latino communities in the South to access jobs, school, and entertainment. Opportunities in the city and central hub from watching the Milwaukee Bucks play to attending Milwaukee Area Technical College. And if I didn't mention the technical college, I'd go home and sleep alone because my wife is a full-time teacher at the community college. You all think I'm kidding. I'm not. And we're going to ensure that good-paying construction jobs created in this project go to members of the community benefiting the very same project. And with the help of your congressional delegation, especially Senator Tammy Baldwin, who worked so hard for these funds, we're making sure that the construction materials of this project are made in America. And if I can digress for 1 second. Look, you know, I've been very involved for a while. I know I look like I just arrived, but all kidding aside, I didn't realize, even though I was deeply involved initially in the civil rights movement that got me involved to run for the first place, I didn't realize that back in Roosevelt's term, when they were going through the fights where the unions could organize, they added a provision to the law that not many presidents paid attention to. And it says that if the Congress appropriates money for the president to spend on a public project or any project, that he must use an American worker and he must use American material. Folks, very few live by that. Very few presidents did that, but not anymore. That's why we're creating jobs. Look, folks, you've lived in and felt the decisions made decades ago. Today, we're making decisions to transform your lives decades to come, and we're doing it all across America. Let's be clear. This groundbreaking investment comes from two historic laws I signed with the support of Tammy and Gwen. My bipartisan infrastructure law, most significant law modernizing our roads, bridges, and so much more in generations, most consequential investment. Another law, the Inflation Reduction Act, which is the most significant investment in fighting climate change and advancing the environment ever in history anywhere in the world. That's not hyperbole. And they're already making a difference. Look, let me give you one example. Back in December, I was in Milwaukee and met with a plumber named Rashawn, who owns it. Is he here? All right. Who owns his own small business, Hero Plumbing. That's removing hundreds of pipes, lead pipes, so children and families in this community can turn on the faucet, clean water comes out without the risk of brain damage. Well, it was supposed to take the city 60 years to eliminate all these pipes. To do this work, because of the infrastructure law I signed, we're now getting it done, all of it done. Every lead pipe in this city within 10 years, gone. I was proud to have Rashawn as my guest at the State of the Union address last week. And folks, we're on our way to delivering clean water to every American. We're on the way to delivering affordable high-speed internet to every American at low cost. The communities too often left behind, we're rebuilding. We're rebuilding the roads. We're filling in the cracks in the sidewalks. We're creating spaces to live and work and play safely and to breathe clean air and to shop at a nearby grocery stocked with fresh and healthy food. We're taking on housing discrimination, increasing access to home ownership, and building more homes and apartments to bring the cost of rent down, which it must be done. Everything we're doing is connecting people with opportunity, not disconnecting people from opportunity. And we're seeing progress. Through my American Rescue Plan, we put $1,400 checks in people's pockets to get them through the pandemic. We invested nearly $80 million in Wisconsin for the state's Small Business Credit Initiative, helping countless small businesses grow. In Milwaukee, small business applications are up 70% compared to before the pandemic. Small businesses make up half of our economy. We always talk to big corporations. It's true, they're gigantic. But if you add up all the small businesses, they make up half of all the gross domestic product, providing good paying jobs and opportunities. And everyone who applies for a small business, a new loan, it's an act of hope. And the share of Black and Latino Americans employed in Milwaukee in 2022 was the highest in more than a decade. And folks, Wages are rising faster than prices, and now we have among the lowest inflation rates of any country in America, and we're still fighting to lower it even further. We're fighting to lower health care costs, education costs, to give just a little more breathing room, as my dad would say, to ordinary families like the one I grew up in. But let's be clear. My predecessor is an ally, and his allies in Congress, including your Senator Ron Johnson, who voted, well, he voted against the infrastructure law that funds this project. They want to undo everything I just talked about. My predecessor talked about infrastructure week for 4 years. He didn't get a single thing done, not one. Ron Johnson, every Republican in Congress, voted against the Inflation Reduction Act, which is helping fund these projects, and he wants to repeal it. Look, folks, with your help, we cut Black and Latino child poverty in half because of the child tax credit through My American Rescue Plan. And led by your Senator Ron Johnson, every single Republican in Congress voted against that as well, every single one. I signed a law to beat Big Pharma by giving Medicare the power to price prescription drugs and lower drug prices for seniors significantly. Every Republican voted against it as well. And by the way, guess what? It lowered the federal deficit by $160 billion. Didn't just save money for seniors. It didn't just save money for seniors. It meant Medicare didn't have to pay out those exorbitant costs. For example, those of you, everybody knows somebody who needs insulin for diabetes. Well, guess what? Just lowering the price to $35, and only costs $10 to make, by the way, instead of $400 a month, saved the government all that money. And now they're trying to cut Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security. Wisconsin's very own Senator Ron Johnson calls Social Security, I get this one, I'm amazed. He calls Social Security a Ponzi scheme. No, I'm serious, think about it. Did you ever think you'd hear anybody say that? A Ponzi scheme? Give me a break. You know, just this week, Donald Trump said cuts to Social Security and Medicare are on the table. When asked if he changed his position, he said, quote, "There's a lot we can do in terms of cutting. Tremendous amount of things we can do," end of quote. I want to assure you, I will never allow it to happen. I won't cut Social Security. I will not cut Medicare. Instead of cutting Social Security and Medicare to give tax breaks to the super wealthy, I'm going to protect and strengthen Social Security and Medicare to make the wealthy begin to pay their fair share. Look, folks, let me close with this. 4 years ago this week, I came to office. Our country was hit by the worst pandemic and economic crisis in a century. Remember the fear and anxiety everybody felt? Record job losses, raging virus that would take more than 1 million American lives. And for every life lost, there was estimated 8 close family behind. 8 children, mother, father, uncles, aunts. A mental health crisis of isolation and loneliness. A president, my predecessor, who failed in the most basic duty any president owes the American people, the duty to care, just to care. And in my view, that's unforgivable. I came to office determined to uphold the duty that gets us through one of the toughest periods in our nation's history, and we have. And now we're building a future of America full of possibilities, building an economy from the middle out and the bottom up, not the top down. That top-down stuff, not a whole lot landed on my dad's kitchen table growing up. Investing in all America and all Americans to make sure everyone has a fair shot, where we leave nobody behind. Look, our plan is working. America's coming back. That's America. That's what this project is all about. The project's for jobs and justice, prosperity, and unlimited possibilities. And that's why I swear to God, I've never been more optimistic about America's future than today. Not because I'm president, because we're at one of those inflection points in history. We really are. Things are going to change no matter who's president in a big way. They're either going to change much for the better or much worse. All we have to do, folks, remember who in God's name we are. We're the United States of America. No. We're the only major country in the world that's come out of every crisis stronger than we went in, stronger than we went in. There's nothing beyond our capacity. I mean it sincerely. Think about it. There's nothing beyond America's capacity if we do it together. And that's what we're going to do. May God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you so much. Thank you, Council.